Bruce Page, anchorman and reporter for the Financial News Network. What you're about to see is a series of reports I produced on a recent assignment. I trust you'll enjoy watching the program as much as we enjoyed putting it together. It fills up your senses, a visit to Beaver Creek. If you can imagine how Alice felt as she slipped into Wonderland, then you'd have some idea of the adventure that beckons you ever further into this world apart. A world unlike any experience it's doubtful you've ever had before and may never have to compare with again. That's an extravagant claim, you say, but when was the last time you had a horse and buggy ride up a snowy forest lane? And check your heartbeat, by the way. Hasn't it already slowed into step with Barney and Banjo's hoofbeats? Inside the guarded gates of Beaver Creek, demands so pressing just hours ago seem to slip away. New thoughts come pouring in instead, like what does lie beyond and what makes Beaver Creek so special to those who've already discovered it. Barney and Banjo's boss, the most likely person you'd ask first.
Well, the charm, the planning, the atmosphere, and probably most of all, the people that have ended up living here. They're just wonderful people.
People like instructor Claude Pardo from Quebec, where skiing comes right after just learning to walk. And for Claude, Beaver Creek is a skier's paradise.
The quality of skiing is just fantastic. A lot of mornings we'll get up and there'll be 1.5 feet of fresh snow. You know, that happens once a season at Mont Tremblant, Quebec, if you're lucky. And so that happens here all the time.
Thoughts to consider as the journey to your lodge comes to an end. This but one of several already built within these grounds, more to be constructed. The Charter, a home for condominium owners or renters, doubles as a refined hotel, giving the appearance outside of a French chateau. That first impression given more credence inside with the French country decor. You're settled in now, far from the madding crowd, sipping refreshment and getting a clearer picture of what adventure awaits you tomorrow. Skiing is why you'd most likely come to Beaver Creek, and what you'd find is 700 developed acres of slopes, with more to come, 40 runs so far, some for beginners, more for intermediates, and yes, of course, some thrillers for the daredevils. The challenging birds of prey runs, for example, or the Olympic-designed 3-mile-long Centennial. But if cross-country is more your style, you'd find a 20-kilometer track awaiting you here at the top of the mountain rather than the bottom. Better to take in the panoramic view. Like most other resorts around the country, there are instructors available to improve your skill. A pretty serious-looking bunch, you'd think, at first glance. Well, obviously not always that serious. But that may actually be to your advantage, according to ski school co-director Chris Ryman.
We try to teach people with the premises or the basis of safety, fun, and learning. And we keep it in that order. The fun is a very big part of skiing. Maybe many years ago, people associated, you take a ski school lesson and it was very regimented and you learn certain maneuvers in certain ways. But the big key thing is that we like to make people aware of and really turn them on to the fun of skiing. I mean, skiing is a sensation sport. It's absolutely, that's what's luring about it. That's why people love to come out here, because when you start sliding on those skis, it just lights you up and makes you feel like $1 million.
At the Beaver Creek Ski School, children as young as 3 are already en route to that $1 million feeling. Their training ground festooned with balloons and animal faces to make them feel at home. But there are older folks to please, too, much more demanding and determined to excel at this sport. And for them, video workshops are offered with instructors showing candid proof of mistakes and then each step of progress. With places to ski all over the world, what's the different appeal of Beaver Creek? We wanted to know.
Excellent terrain and no crowds.
Well, it's beautiful and it's definitely not crowded. It's challenging, and you get a lot of skiing in for your money.
I think it's gorgeous out here. The runs are so nice and wide, and there's a lot of variety for the different types of skiers that are out here.
A family comes here, off of every lift, there's virtually an easy route and a more difficult route. So if a couple want to go ski the more advanced route, some want to go around, they can still join again partway down a trail, down at the base of the lift. They get to ride the lift back up together. So the unity and the way it ties together that way for a family situation is very unique.
There have to be critics, but we couldn't find any. But then if they really don't like it here, you'd expect them to be somewhere else anyway. Guess that's where they were. Even those who are here are hard to catch. As soon as they're down, they're up again on one of the 8 lifts, able to carry 13,000 skiers every hour. Never put anywhere near that test yet. A visit to Beaver Creek does fill up your senses. Your eyes take in the awesome beauty of this winter wonderland. Nature's beauty first. Miles and miles of mountain peaks and sloping valleys in a blanket of snow for as far as the eyes can see. Sunlight and shadows competing for attention through groves of aspen, quite unaware how each actually complements the other, making the scene so memorable. And bushy green spruce trees weighed heavy with snow. Then your ears hear sounds again, long lost and almost forgotten. The babbling brook, for example, actually Beaver Creek, meandering its merry way right through this valley. The crackling fire, inviting you to warmth from a huge country hearth.
Christian brothers doesn't mean you're not going to have problems.
The laughter of normally serious businessmen at play in their treehouse jacuzzi.
This is really nice.
The hiss of your skis gliding down acres of snow. The excitement voiced by the older generation that there are still new thrills to feel.
I've proven that a 50-year-old grandmother can take one day of ski lessons and come down these beautiful slopes, go all the way up to the top of the hill, and come down without killing yourself and enjoying every minute of the scenery, of the beautiful scenery. And I think I'd like to point out that you're never too old, ever, to learn how to ski.
And never too young either to start feeling the skiing thrill. Listen to a 5-year-old from the flatlands of Kansas City. Can you come down that big hill all by yourself?
Yeah. Just with a little bit of help.
How much help?
Oh, well, I don't know. Just a little bit.
And then there's sound and sight together, listening to an old-fashioned oompa band while watching baby's first exposure to it. And then after all that, perhaps the most unfamiliar and beautiful sound of all, the silence of the wilderness. Chances are, if skiing is a sport you feel passionate enough about, you have at least toyed with, if not seriously considered, buying property at a resort. Reasons? Long-term recreational value for you and your family, or an investment with potential for a big payoff later as skiing grows in popularity. Dallas resident Dr. Tom Parker was one of the first to invest in a home away from home here when the Beaver Creek development was just beginning. He explains why.
I think it's a great place for investment. We've compared it to other resorts. We've owned a house and a condominium in other resorts, and the appreciation is better than we've seen elsewhere.
What the developers had learned from their mistakes at Vail, 10 miles down the road, they wanted to implement at Beaver Creek, make it better, more refined. And they got a lot of unexpected and not always welcome help from environmentalists. As a result, it took 7 years and $7 million of planning before approval to proceed. It's not uncommon in resort areas for standards to start high, then slip ever lower as years go by. Will that happen here? Tom Parker doubts that because of the master plan, along with financial backing, to spend $1 billion by 1995. And then his own experience. This, his second Beaver Creek home, is persuasive evidence of how well he did on the sale of his first. At Beaver Creek, the cheapest investment option is a unit within Park Plaza. $5,000 buys you an interval ownership, the right to call this your home for a week every year thereafter. That right passed on to your children or other beneficiaries. The Post Montaigne has a similar plan with 2- and 3-bedroom suites ranging from $7,000 to $42,000, depending on the size of the unit and number of weeks you want. With a bigger budget, you could invest in condominiums to own outright from $250,000 to almost $2 million. And then the most expensive option of all, private homes. They begin around $600,000 and run well into the millions. Surprisingly, 30% of those who come to Beaver Creek don't come to ski. So what do they find to do? Non-skiers find common unity with those who are around food. And outside Village Hall, at the base of the slopes, there's plenty of that. Barbecued chicken or ribs, for example, or wieners.
That's just where I want to be.
Baked potato with all the trimmings.
Good one.
For that matter, a smorgasbord of hearty fare to warm your stomach in the cool mountain air. But if refined surroundings and dining experience are more to your liking, take a walk about 100 yards to Kevin Garrity's Legends Restaurant. There you'll find Chef Paul Mortensen, trained in the kitchens of France, leading his lively crew through the maze of haute cuisine preparation. What you see is what you get, and what you get will leave to your own imagination, but fair to say, well worth your walk. Take a bus to Vail is also what many non-skiers do to check out all the shops, and a good variety there are. And with guests from all over the world, it's an interesting place for people watching too. And after dark, some colorful events from time to time. Even conversation can be colorful here, from local historian Don Simonton. Listen to just one of his many tales.
This happens to be the site of one of the first homesteads in Beaver Creek. The first one up here in the valley, as a matter of fact, settled by an old bachelor named Lyle Oxford. And I found this guy's rhubarb patch over there on the hillside, at least 200 yards from his cabin. And I couldn't figure out why until I discovered that he made homemade wine. And that's the first place in this valley that it comes clear of snow in the springtime. So he'd get his wine going just a little earlier. Evidently he got into something besides rhubarb one year, because we read that his neighbors turned him in for being a little bats in the belfry,